there is a $2,500 reward for tips that lead to helping to solve a crime. Chris?
David Lee, thank you. Now to politics. Donald Trump is tightening the polls as he runs a more disciplined campaign. That is, until late this week when he brought up the birther issue again and then suggested Hillary Clinton's Secret Service detail should disarm and, quote, let's see what happens. In a moment, we'll talk with New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, a top Trump advisor, about the campaign, as well as the explosions in his state and New York City. But first, Hillary Clinton's running mate, the Democratic vice presidential nominee, Senator Tim Kaine. Senator Kaine, what can you tell us about the explosion in New York City and the investigation of whether or not it's a terrorist attack?
You know, Chris, as of right now, that investigation is still underway. The main feeling that we have is concern for the victims, and for an explosion of that size, the fact that there are no fatalities yet is positive. But in terms of the details, it's unclear. And I know everyone is looking to see what the cause was. Could it potentially be connected to terrorism? No evidence yet, but I know that's going to be looked at very, very closely.
All right, let's turn to politics. And I want to begin with Donald Trump's comment on Friday night about what he believes is Hillary Clinton's hypocrisy when it comes to the issue of gun control. Here he is.
I think that her bodyguards should drop all weapons. They should disarm. Right? Take their guns away. She doesn't want guns. Let's see what happens to her.
Senator, do you believe that Donald Trump in any way was inciting an act of violence against Clinton?
I do believe that, Chris. I was stunned when I saw it, although he's done it before. So two things. First, Hillary Clinton and I believe in the Second Amendment. We support the Second Amendment. We do support gun safety rules consistent with the Second Amendment. We're not taking people's guns away. But second, this notion that he's done before, look, if Hillary gets elected, then maybe Second Amendment people will have to take care of the situation, or his comment Friday night, or his statements in rallies, you know, I'd like to punch the guy in the face. He is using language that is an incitement to violence, or an encouragement of violence, or at least being kind of cavalier and reckless about violence. And that has no place in any election, especially an election to be president, commander-in-chief of this country.
But to ask specifically, because what you're saying is fairly stunning, you believe it's an incitement to violence against his opponent in the presidential race, Hillary Clinton?
I do. So, I mean, use the other example. You put it in the context of other things he has said. If Hillary gets elected, we may need Second Amendment people to take care of this. What did that mean when he said that just 3 weeks ago? And when you look at a series of these comments that he's making, I do believe it is an incitement, or at a minimum, an expression of indifference to whether violence would occur. And this is a pattern that has been repeated over and over again, and I think it doesn't belong in any race, much less a race to be president of this country.
Trump also made a statement on Friday about the birther movement. Let's take a look at that.
Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. I finished it. I finished it. You know what I mean. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
Senator, do you think that Donald Trump is a racist?
Chris, I don't know Donald Trump, so if I don't know somebody, I'm just not going to make that claim. But this is really important. For 5 years, from 2011 to 2016, last Friday, Donald Trump has perpetrated a bigoted lie that President Obama is not a United States citizen. This is so painful because, as you know, when African Americans came here in 1619 to Jamestown, all the way up through the end of the Civil War, they could not be citizens. That's what the Dred Scott decision said. Whether they were born here or born elsewhere, whether they were free or slave, they were not allowed to be U.S. citizens. So for 5 years, when Donald Trump has pushed this bigoted lie, that the African-American president of the United States is not a U.S. citizen, so many people connect that to the most painful time in American history where having African descent barred you from citizenship in this country. And what I hope somebody will ask Donald Trump is, when you were doing that for 5 years, did you really believe that to be true? In which case, how gullible are you? How bizarrely conspiratorial are you? Or were you aware that it wasn't true? And if so, why were you trying to whip up the darkest emotions connected to the most painful chapter in American life?
Let's turn to Hillary Clinton's health, which also raises the question of her transparency, because she was asked repeatedly this week when she told you about her illness, and she repeatedly refused to answer. Here she is.
I communicated with Tim. I talked to him again last night. We've communicated, but I am, not going to go into our personal conversations.
Senator Kaine, it turns out now that Clinton was diagnosed with pneumonia on Friday. She collapsed getting into that van at the 9/11 event on Sunday morning. Simple question. When did she tell you that she had pneumonia?
And Chris, I actually answered this on Monday and then again on Tuesday. We talked on Sunday. I called her after the incident in New York to express concern, and then we communicated over the course of a few hours, and I learned right away when I reached out to her, and that was when I learned about her condition.
Why didn't she just, if I may, why didn't she just say it? Because this gets to the question of transparency, and I want to put up a new Fox poll. People were asked whether the candidates are honest and trustworthy. Clinton's net is -30. Trump's is -19. Now, neither of those is good, but by a substantial margin, Senator, the American people seem to think that Trump is more honest than Clinton.
Well, I would challenge that. I mean, all I have to do is hold up.
Those are the
he said he would. Right. But he said he would release his tax returns, and he's not doing it. But no, back to it. Again, I was very plain with the press about this right away. That's when we talked. And again, I did say what she said, which is I was not going to get into the content of the conversations. Obviously, that content is important for running mates to be able to share without being public about it. But the timing, I think, was quite clear as of Monday when I spoke publicly about this with the press.
All right. Well, that brings us to the state of the race, which frankly keeps tightening, Senator. In the latest Real Clear Politics average nationally, Clinton now leads by 1.5 points. That's down from 8 points in August. In Ohio, Trump is now up 1 point. Less than a month ago, he trailed by 5. And in Florida, Trump leads by less than a point. In late August, Clinton led by 4.5. Senator, your lead is gone.
Well, Chris, you know that I do politics in Virginia, and I think you know my state. This is like every race I've ever been in. We went into the first two conventions basically tied. We came out of the second convention, you're right, with a good lead, and it has tightened up over time just as I thought it would, just as I actually told Secretary Clinton when I encouraged her to run in April of 2014. I said, look, you're the underdog until they call you the winner.
Briefly, we're running out of time. I mean, if Trump is a bigot, if Trump is inciting violence, why is it that Clinton can't keep a lead against him?
Well, look, we are a very divided nation, Chris. We're very closely politically divided. And, what we're trying to do over the course of the end of the campaign is just compare visions. Hillary and I have a vision for the country, Stronger Together. And that's the book that we've put out recently with all our policies. Donald Trump also put out a book when he decided to run, and he calls it Crippled America. I don't recognize Crippled America in the optimistic, can-do, upbeat, positive spirit of the American people, but obviously we've got a real case to make between now and November 8th that our vision of Stronger Together is the vision that Americans should embrace going forward, and we have confidence that we will.
Senator Kaine, thank you. Safe travels on the campaign trail. Thanks for talking with us, and thank you for bringing some props along as well.
You bet, Chris. Good to be with you.
Joining me now, Governor Chris Christie, the head of Donald Trump's White House transition team. Governor, I want to start with the breaking news about the explosions in New Jersey and New York yesterday. What's the latest on the investigation, and do you believe, have any reason to believe, that the explosion in your state was an act of terror targeting that Marine charity race?
Well, Chris, first off, as far as New Jersey is concerned, fortunately there was no one injured. The race had not yet started when the bomb exploded, and so we're very, very grateful for that. The FBI is leading the investigation here in New Jersey in coordination with the New Jersey